Good morning, ladies. No, gentlemen. Oh, sorry, one. Good. Well, a hell of a day. And pretty windy out there. Thanks very much for going the effort of getting here. Our first speaker this morning is Nick Wilson from the Arts Council. And Nick's going to tell us about the art thing, whatever.
The behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Nick. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you.
So you just sit there. So
yep.
They're working.
How is everybody? Good? Okay. Ooh, well done. Oh, slightly better. Can you see that all right?
Yeah, good.
I'll try not to keep putting my head in there, but rightio. So I'm president of the Horsham Arts Council. Have you heard of the Horsham Arts Council? Okay. Despite our name, we don't do art. We do performing art, so we probably should add performing in there somewhere, but we're all about musicals, plays, that sort of thing. As I said, I'm the current president of the Horsham Arts Council. I joined the Horsham Arts Council way back in 2000, so 25 years ago. My first show back then was Les Mis, and a bit of useless history on why I joined. When I was young and silly, I used to get on the guitar and turn up at people's places with a skin full and play songs and sing and carry on. And back in the late 90s, early thousands, Horsham Arts Council had a very, very proactive member, Jerry Nichols. I'm not sure if anybody knows the name. He's since moved to Melbourne. Now, I ended up at his house one night, very drunk with a few friends playing the guitar, and he said, "Oh, you can sing, you should be part of the Arts Council." Oh, no, I'm not going to do that, no. And anyway, a few other nights ended up at his house, and he kept egging me along, and at that stage I was a single man, and Jerry convinced me that the Arts Council was made up mostly of young single women. So, needless to say, after a couple of years of Jerry nagging me to at least audition for a show, I did for Les Mis. I got a part, absolutely fell in love with being on stage and performing, singing, doing all that sort of stuff, and came back the following year for Anything Goes. In Anything Goes, I met my now wife. So Jerry's nagging got me all the way to where I am now with the Horsham Arts Council, and I'm happily married with 3 kids because of the Horsham Arts Council. So bit of an interesting backstory, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. So basically, a few months ago, I was contacted by Rotary East, who wanted to know what we actually do. Like they knew that we do musicals. We used to do a lot of plays when Wesley Performing Arts Centre was open. Unfortunately, that's closed, and with the new town hall, which I'm sure you've all been in, it's an amazing venue. But with that, we can't afford to hire that and put on our plays anymore. So the only way forward for us is to do major musicals, which obviously sell a lot of tickets, and you know, we can recoup what we're putting into these shows. So, what is the Horsham Arts Council? As I said, we're a community group. We're a not-for-profit group. The whole group, committee, all the volunteers, we all do it for the love of it. No one gets paid. The musical directors don't get paid. When we have bands, they'd like to be paid, and sometimes it's hard work to convince them that we can't pay them because we can't afford to. But yeah, everybody there puts in insane amount of time to put the shows together that a lot of people come and see, all for the love of performing or singing, or some people do it just for building sets and things like that. So it's quite a broad range of people we bring in. How long has the Horsham Arts Council been entertaining the Wimmera? So this year was our 60th year as a not-for-profit group. So we formed 60 years ago. In that time, we've done hundreds of shows, different musicals, as I said, plays back in the early days. Unfortunately, we're not doing them currently, but we're looking at ways to bring that back, I guess. I, for one, have never done a play, and I would love to do a play. I think it would be a completely different challenge to singing and dancing, which is my main thing. But yeah, we've done all sorts of shows, blockbusters down to tiny little, 4-people plays. So, do you guys come to a few of our shows, or have you been to some of our shows? Yep, absolutely. That's excellent. Yeah, so the reality of a not-for-profit theatre group, which is us. Now, I've been around Victoria and visited quite a few other small theatre groups like ours. We're very, very, very fortunate in that we have our own premises. We were lucky enough, I think about 22 or 3 years ago, to purchase the old wool shed on Hamilton Road. Doesn't look like the wool shed anymore. We've tried to make it look somewhat homely. But we actually rehearse out there. We build our sets out there. We essentially put our shows together out there before we move into the theatre. So we're lucky that we have somewhere to go. A lot of other theatre groups in Victoria, probably 95% of them, don't have a base, don't have somewhere to call home. So they hire halls to rehearse in, they hire sheds to build their sets and make their costumes in. We're very, very fortunate to have our premises, but with that comes a cost of running it. So being a not-for-profit group, we don't have any income at all unless we're doing musicals or some kind of live show. With that, it takes a lot of effort. And because we're run by volunteers, sometimes you get burned out and you don't want to do the next show or you can't, get a life, work/Arts Council balance to make the next show come on. So we do contact a lot of local businesses for sponsorships. We apply for grants through whoever's offering, essentially. The Sports and Community Club in Horsham has granted us quite a few lump sums, I guess, to do up our shed, to go towards our next musical, that sort of thing. To give you an idea on the sort of running costs that we have at I keep calling it the shed, but that's what we call it in the Arts Council, our premises, with insurances, which we have to have fairly hefty public liability insurance with volunteers coming in case one of them injures themselves, which we have had happen in the past. We had one of our young girls during a show in the town hall. She got a lift up like this. As she came down, her knee went sideways and wasn't a good look. She sort of limped herself off stage, and that was the end for her show. It ended up costing, I think it was about $11,000 in surgery and stuff to get her back to somewhat normal again. So we need to cover all that sort of stuff. Obviously, we have rates that we need to cover on top of many other small incidental things. Now, we do own a lot of what we have out there, but the kicker is when we put on a musical, which a lot of people don't know, is it costs us between $80,000 and $120,000 to put on one show. So as a group of volunteers that don't get paid, most people can't believe it costs us that much, but between paying the rights to the shows that we hire, we can't do musicals for free. We have to pay companies a percentage of our takings. We have to pay the town hall for the hire, and that goes on a daily basis. So generally, if we do 2 weekends for one of our shows, we have to hire the theatre for at least 3 weeks. We have a week to set up and get the lighting right for the show. We have to move all our sets in. We have to set all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of that sort of gear goes on behind the scenes, but that adds up to about 3 weeks of hire for the whole hall, which is quite expensive. On top of that, we have makeup. Sometimes we have costume hire. Did any of you guys see Shrek when we did that last year? Yeah. Yep. That was a fairly intense show, makeup-wise and costume-wise. We had to hire the dragon from a company in Melbourne, in Essendon actually. Makeup we got from America. We imported a lot of makeup and prosthetics and things. But then the stuff that we did make, obviously we have to buy the materials and all that sort of stuff. So before you know it, you've spent $80,000 and you hope that you're going to square out or make $1. In the case of Shrek, it was closer to $120,000 that we put through on that. So it's quite an expensive exercise. But with everyone teaming up, and I'd hate to say the reputation we have now, people generally come to our shows even if they don't know them. We like to think that we're going to square out of a show when we put it on, or make a little bit of a profit so that they can go back into improving our facility on Hamilton Road, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's quite a few sponsors on there, and we're very fortunate that a lot of these sponsors, they're all local businesses, but a lot of them sponsor us continuously. So we ring them up and go, we've got another show coming. They go, happy days, we're more than happy to come on board again. And yeah, they give us a mixture of money or in kind. So in kind would be like the paper. If we spend $1, they'll give us $1 sort of thing. So that's sort of where we bulk out our marketing and that sort of stuff. McDonald's have always been on board. Prowse Swimming School. Some of the businesses on there have children that are in our shows or family members that are in our shows, and then we get a new sponsor when that happens, which is really good. So, any questions before I move on?
And Nick,
yes.
do you develop your own show? Wouldn't that be, if somebody could develop a show yourselves, wouldn't that cut your costs?
It does. There's some shows don't require us to pay rights, but very, very, very few. Jerry Nichols, the guy that convinced me to join the Arts Council back in 2000, he actually wrote a musical which we did perform in Wesley. Oh, that was probably 23 years ago or something like that, which he titled Theatre of the Dead. It was kind of a comedy musical. It was a very fun show, and because he'd written it and he was happy for us to piece it together and put it on, he did the music and everything. That cost us nothing. So that in that instance, you do make a little bit more money back. And we have had another gentleman write a show for us, which was like a variety show, like snippets of short stories and things like that. Gilbert and Sullivan is a company that you can perform their shows free of charge because the shows are so old. So Pirates of Penzance, HMS Pinafore, those types of shows. Having said that, Pirates of Penzance, when we did that last year, we had to pay rights on because it was SG's version of Pirates of Penzance, which was written by an Australian musical director. He brought it up to the 21st century, and a lot of the content in that was written by him, a lot of the banter and that sort of stuff. And there was a couple of songs he added into it too. So we actually had to pay rights for that one. But as a rule, if you do them as the traditional play, it doesn't cost us anything. So
what would you pay for, say, a show?
They work it on a percentage of your ticket sales. So when at the end of our season, our show run, so like Shrek, the company in Melbourne or Sydney, whoever it happens to be, they want a copy of the invoice from the Horsham Town Hall to prove what our ticket sales were. And then they go, rightio, you sold $20,000 in tickets. We want, say, 16 or 18% of that. So it's a good hit. Yeah, I can see you shaking your heads. But that's one of the major expenses we have when we're putting on our shows is the rights. And then there's other stuff that pops up like our programs and things like that as well.
Do you market any of your show?
Yeah, we try to market as best we can. There's been a fairly solid shift, I suppose, in the last couple of years since COVID as to what the best way to market is. We used to do a lot of radio, a bit of paper and some social media, but I think since COVID's hit and everyone's forced to lock down, they go online a lot more. So we're trying to increase our online marketing through Facebook and Instagram and all this sort of stuff. We still do paper and radio, but I think the market's shifted more online now. But we still don't seem to be able to get it right. So we try and change it up every show, but we're still not sure that we're getting it 100% right. We do some of the digital billboards around town also. If you're not looking for it, you may not notice it, but the one near Cafe Jazz up on the roof there, we advertise on that. The one above Baker's Delight we did this year. So yeah, we try to mix it up.
Yeah.
But as I say, does it work? Yeah, we're not really sure. Any other questions? No? Okay, so who runs the Horsham Arts Council? So we have 12 on committee. 4 exec, which is the president, vice president, secretary and treasurer, which is the 4 up the top there. I'm the current president, as I said before. Every year in December, we have an AGM where people vote who they want to come into the Arts Council and essentially do all the stuff that nobody wants to do, the jobs behind the scenes, making decisions, that sort of thing. And yeah, we run with 12, 8 general committee and 4 exec. It does change, not massively each year. There's a few people that have been there a long time. Simon Dandy on the top right has been around for quite a while. He's been on the committee a long time. He's our current treasurer. He's also a life member. We've got Debbie Boucher. She's a life member. She's been a part of the Arts Council since the early 70s. Sandy Wills on the bottom right, she's also a life member. She's been around since the 70s also. So a few of the other younger guys have been around on stage, but they've put their hand up to help on committee. So come December, the votes will go in again. You can nominate yourself if you want to be a part of the committee, and then if you put your hand up, then the members hopefully will either vote for you or vote not for you, so that we get a reasonably fair committee. Generally, last year we don't get a lot of people wanting to be on committee. So we may have 200 or 300 members, but not a lot of people want to do that sort of job with the committee. That's not to say there's anything wrong with being on committee, but that's probably the least fun you'll have being a part of the Horsham Arts Council, because that's the business side of it and making the decisions and what have you. So, any questions?
What is your membership? How much is your membership?
So that's actually coming up off the top of my head. I think it's $60 for an individual, and then it's $150 for a family, which is 2 adults and 2 children. I'll double check that when we get up to it. We did actually change it last year. We've run it quite low for quite a number of years, and we made a decision with all the costs of everything going up that we needed to increase it slightly. We have kind of 2 parts to membership. So if you're a member of the Arts Council, you get newsletters, you get all that sort of stuff. If you want to do a show, we actually have what they call a show fee. So that kind of covers you for makeup and cover, I guess, while you're in the Horsham Town Hall. Because if you injure yourself in the Town Hall, it comes back on us, not on the Town Hall. So we have that as part of the show fees as well. So, and the show fee also goes towards getting the next show on. And that show fee is not a set fee. It depends on the production team that's doing the show. So say Shrek, where we've got an insane amount of cast on stage, the show fee may be a bit smaller because we've got so many people involved. Yeah. Any questions? No? How can you become a member? Anyone can be a member of the Arts Council. So on our website, which is horshamartscouncil.com.au, we actually have a link on there and a membership form. So we've got quite a few people that are members that have nothing to do with us. They just like supporting us, which is really good. But if you want to be involved at the shed, behind the scenes, on stage, all that sort of stuff, you do need to be a paid member, because then you're under our insurance should something horrible happen. It also requires a working with children check. So some of our shows we have underage kids involved. Did anybody see Pirates of Penzance last year? Yep. So we had the little kids that were the police officers in that came out and belted up all the pirates. Some of those kids were as young as 7. So in the case of that, if you haven't got a working with children check and you can't prove to us that you've got the Working with Children check, we require the members to put the Horsham Arts Council on that check, and then we get notified if something goes wrong. You can't be a part of the show, and that's just an absolute blanket rule that we have, because we want the kids to feel safe at the Arts Council, and obviously everybody else we want to be safe as well. So even in shows where we don't have a kids chorus, we still require the Working with Children check, because it delves into other things that we might need to know about as an organisation that we, may not want people associated with certain things, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah, fill out the form, send it in with your payment and your Working with Children check, and you're a member. Any questions? No? So, how do we decide our next show? So, when we've finished a show, generally we open up applications to put on a show through our organisation 12 months before it goes on stage. So, at the minute, if you wanted to put in an application to put a show on in October next year, we're quite happy for someone to come forward with a proposal and ideas and whatnot for whatever they want to do. The last few years, I guess we've burned ourselves out doing such big shows. The mainstays, the people that do a lot of the work, have run out of puff. So we haven't had the usual people coming forward to put applications in to put a show on. Now, quite a few years ago, we redid and we came up with a show proposal form out of a necessity, because we had a couple of people come to, say, a meeting like this. You guys are the committee, I'm the person putting on the show. And a piece of paper with the name of the show on it and 10 casts and put on the table and go, I want to do this. Now, we don't want to hand over $80,000 based on that. We want to know that they've dotted the T's and crossed the I's, or the other way around, dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and that they're looking at all bases as far as covering the costs and potentially making a profit. So we came up with a show proposal form, which is also accessible through our website. So if anybody comes in and they want to do a show, they can download the form. One of the ideas behind the form was to prompt people's thinking as to what they need to be thinking about when they're going to put a production team or a show forward. So we put on there, have they been experienced with Horsham Arts Council? Have they assistant directed with the Arts Council? One of our blanket rules with directing is they have to have at least assistant directed one of our shows before we allow them to come and direct a show. Now, there's a couple of reasons behind that. If they've been involved and they've assistant directed, we know what they work like. So we can say, yes, they'll be good for our group. They're not going to, upset people. They're going to do the right thing. If we have people come from other theatre groups that have had 100 years experience putting on musicals, we still won't let them direct, because we don't know the person and the way they operate. So that's one of the rules on there. But it also goes through who's going to produce the show. So Horsham Arts Council produce, but we have an executive producer, and their job is to run around and make sure that the costume coordinator's making the costumes on time, the director's putting schedules together on time, the cast are doing the right thing. If there's problems, they go to the executive producer. So they have to think about who's going to be responsible and have enough time to put in all the work to do that. Who's going to do makeup? Who's going to do costumes? Who's going to build sets is always a big one. With the new town hall, there's a lot of rules with what we make our sets out of, how we assemble them, whether they're solid enough for us to climb up on, all that sort of stuff. So when we used to do shows back a long time ago in the old cinema, I don't know if any of you guys saw our shows in the old cinema. Yeah, a few nodding. So the old cinema, there was really no rules. And I say that in the nicest way. We could do whatever we wanted back then. I climbed into the roof multiple times to hang flies with ropes. Where in hindsight, it's probably really dangerous and all the rest of it, but that was what we did back then. Now, the old cinema, the stage was raked, so it was on quite a lane, if you like. So we used to build our sets on a lane. So when you see the sets in our shed, they'd be like this. When they were in that old theatre, they were perfect, So little things like that. In the new theatre, we actually have to build a set, then have the theatre manager come down and make sure that it complies with the new theatre. And flame, whether it's flammable or all that sort of stuff. In the old one, we built whatever we want out of whatever we want, and we got on with it. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute too. But yeah, so we have all that in there to make people think and really, go through who's going to be the best person for the job. Once they've filled out the form, and the form's quite long, it's about 3 or 4 pages long. That's kind of the top of the first page. It's a bit hard to see, actually. It's a bit out of focus. Why is it not down to the next one? Yeah. So it's quite long. It goes through basically everything. We have on there royalties. We have script hire because we have to hire the scripts for the shows. We have venue hire, booking fees. Believe it or not, we get charged fees for ticket sales, and we also get charged credit card fees. So Shrek, we got a bill for $5,000 for just people paying with their credit cards. So all those things add up to what I was saying before, the $80,000 to $120,000. All those little things come in. So our form tries to eliminate missing a step or missing an expense because we can't afford to. So we go through all that. Once that's filled out and there's a name in every position, there's a dollar amount, even if it's an estimate. How we like to run with ticket sales is we like to run at 70% of capacity. So in the case of the town hall has a seating capacity of approximately 480, we'd run at around 300, 320 on our budget. Some shows we sell out completely like Shrek did. Other shows we might only sell 60 or 70%. So, but if we work on 70%, we're going to be pretty close in the wash-up as long as the expenses don't blow out. So we go through all that. Once that form's completely filled out, the person or the director and producer, potential director and producer that filled it out, come to a committee meeting where myself and those other 11 people are. Once a month we do that, and they put the proposal forward a week before the meeting so that we can all read it and digest it, and then we ask them questions. So we try to make it simple, but at the same time it's quite complex because as I said, we can't afford to miss a show, I guess, or lose money. But questions might be like, how many shows have you done before? You've assistant directed before, this is the first time directing. Do you think you're going to have time to do it? All that sort of stuff. It goes on. And then the last part of that is we look at what the show is, and then we decide whether we think it's going to work in Horsham or whether we think it's not going to work in Horsham. And that's sometimes the decider as to whether or not we let a show happen or we don't. With Shrek, Shrek was a massive musical. It's one of only 2 musicals we've done in 60 years that sold out before it opened. There wasn't a seat left before opening night, which was a really great thing to happen. But that show was put forward multiple times, quite a few years before it went on stage, because there was holes in the application, or the timing was wrong, or the team was wrong. So while we knew it was going to be a big show, we still didn't just approve it willy-nilly because we knew it was going to be a big show. We still had to dot the I's and cross the T's. To give you an extreme example, we had American Idiot. I'm not sure if any of you guys saw American Idiot. No, it was a show that was a very hard sell to the committee. Now, I was a part of the committee when that one came forward, and that show is a rock and roll show, like a fairly rocky show. We had a live band, electric guitars, all that stuff. It was an amazing show, but there was a lot of swearing in it. There was drug use in it. There was sex scenes in it, and we thought, how is this going to work in the Wimmera? Like, with the people that love coming to our shows, this is not a usual show that we would do it. It's a big risk. So we went through everything on that. We looked at the pros and the cons of the show. We'd come off multiple very successful shows, and we thought we were in a position that we could try it. If we lost money, we'd move on and do something else. But we were prepared to take a bit of a burn on that to try something different. Now, it did get a few noses out of joint because of the content. When the show finally went on stage, we only ran one weekend for it because we really wasn't sure if it was going to work or not. It was almost a sellout, and people wanted more. We couldn't just put it on a following weekend because we didn't have the weekend booked. It was a very, very successful show. We didn't burn money. We got nominated for quite a few Victorian Theatre Guild Awards, which means we've been recognised against all the peers, I guess, in Victoria, which was quite an honour. But it was one. Didn't matter how good the team was. We really had to think about whether it was right for the Wimmera. And a lot of our regulars didn't come and see it, but the people that did were really glad they did. So occasionally we'll take a risk like that. But ultimately speaking, if the team's right and the budget we think is right, if we think there's any holes in it or we're not happy with something that they've put in there, that's what the discussion will be before we approve it. Then once all that's done, the potential director and producer leaves the meeting, and the 12 of us talk about it. I was going to say argue. We don't really argue, but we discuss things. And very few shows is it unanimous with the committee that it goes through. American Idiot, having 12 committee members, you only have to have 7 to make the show go forward, so you can have 5 that really don't want the show to happen and 7 that do. Occasionally it's hung 6 and 6. In that scenario, it's up to the president to make the call. So I've had to do that once, and I made the right call, I'd like to say. But that was Pirates of Penzance, and that ended up being quite a popular show. But it does vary from show to show. So, yeah. Any questions before I move on?
Any flops?
We have had quite a few, yeah. When I say that, nothing devastating for our group. But anything that we don't make money or lose money on is a hard blow for us, I guess, because it's our sole source of income. So with our sponsorships that we were talking about before, a lot of that goes towards producing our programs and things like that, because these cost quite a bit of money to put together. Once we pay the graphic designers and things like that, and photographers and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of the sponsorship goes towards the incidental stuff, whereas the income itself generally comes from the final product of the show. So, but we have had a few shows in the past where we lose money. We never lose 20 or 30 grand, but we might lose 10 grand or something like that, and that's pretty hard when that happens.
Oh, that's the best.
Probably cats.
Yeah.
I think would have been probably our most successful as far as profits and things go. I could be corrected on that, but we actually did that in the old cinema. Did anyone see Cats when we did it? That was an insanely large show to get together. The production crew and team for that spent over a year getting that one on stage, but the costumes and things were fairly extravagant for that too. And all that was a part of that. But they also had boot camps and fitness camps for that one because of how physical it was, and singing at the same time becomes a real challenge. If you're not fit, a lot of people can sing, but when you've got to do backflips and run around and stuff, it becomes a whole different ball game. So, but I think it would have been our most successful. Yeah.
Have you ever done the Phantom?
No, we haven't. No. I think technically it may be out of our reach for some of the sets and whatnot. Obviously, vocally, the Phantom would need to be pretty sharp. Now, I'm not sure. Got to be careful what I say. I'm not sure we've got any members at the minute that could sing as well as the lead role requires. But having said that, we have adapted other roles in other shows where the vocal director is able to, change the pitch and that sort of stuff so that it's achievable. It's not quite where it needs to be, but for 95% of the audience, it's fine. So, yeah.
Well,
Oh, it'd be a great show. Yeah. And there'd be a lot of those types of shows. Bring in people that wouldn't do a show normally, if that makes sense. So, like back when we did Les Mis, all these people came out of nowhere, especially men, because they wanted to play Javert or Jean Valjean. Whereas when you do something lesser known, like when we did What's New Pussycat quite a few years ago, nobody knew what the show was. So it was just the regular people came back to audition and do that show. Because they're there for the love of the show, they're not there for the love of the musical that's going on, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Any questions?
What do you do with all the props and costumes after the show? You recycle new people?
We do, yeah. So, out at our shed, or our premises, it's kind of in two parts, our premises. So, it's three parts actually. We built a small foyer at the front, which we have all our show boards and things on, and our life member boards and what have you. So it's quite a neat little room. When you go through that, we have our rehearsal space. Now, the rehearsal space is generally empty unless we're doing a show, and then we build our sets in there. So what's in there is exactly what goes into the theatre. Well, we're very fortunate the rehearsal space is basically the same width between the legs or the curtains on the side of the stage. So our sets can be built 1-to-1 scale for the theatre. Behind that is the next room, or next two sections, and we've got so many props and old doors and wheelchairs and all sorts of things out there that we've accumulated over years and years and years of people donating from other shows, and we try to, when we finish a show, reuse as much stuff, materials that we had in that show as we can for the next show. So if we can repaint it to make it look different, or we can pull it down or use half of it or cut it in half, we'll do all that sort of stuff, because that is a very expensive side of the show, the sets. Sometimes we hire them too, but if you actually saw inside our shed, you'd be horrified at how much stuff's in there. So one of our most popular props is our grease car. We actually have an old restored, I couldn't even tell you what model of car it is, I should know, but looks like the grease car from the movie. It's like a 1940s or 50s flash-looking thing. And we painted it up all red with the lightning bolts down the side and all that sort of stuff. And that's been hired out 3 times this year to other theatre groups. It's even been in the Sydney Professional Show many years ago. They hired it from us. But it's probably our number one prop. But yeah, we hide that in a shipping container and that sort of stuff. Whereas all the other stuff we'll pull down, remake, destroy, throw out at working bees. Yeah, we try to be as efficient as we can. So yeah, that's all right. Any other questions?
Is it a fairly high firing fee that you have to pay the town hall to rehearsals and things like that?
It is, yeah. We, as a local community group, the town hall subsidise or reduce the rate massively for us. Sorry?
I said they do reduce it.
They do, yeah, compared to like a travelling group that come to town for a show or something like that. Yeah. Part of the town hall hire is the hall itself. Then we have to pay the staff that work there while the shows are on. So depending on the show, we might have two Horsham Town Hall qualified staff to run the flies, which are the props that drop in and out on the ropes. We're not allowed to operate them anymore. In the old hall, we used to do all that ourselves, but we have to pay them an hourly wage. So while we're in the hall, if we require them for the show, we've got to pay them on an hourly rate during the show, or for as long as they're there. We have to pay the bar staff out the front. So when people want to drink at interval and stuff during our shows, we're propping them up as well. So there's quite a few components come into it with the town hall, but yeah, it's for 3 weeks. It's upward of 20,000. It costs us. So yeah, there's a lot of expense in doing these shows, as I say. But that is one of the things, and we do have that on our proposal form, town hall hire. Now, if we had if Wesley was still going, the hire fee for that was peanuts. The city council now has taken over Wesley, so when it gets reopened and back up and going again, we don't know what the fee will be there. But before it closed down, when we'd do a show there, we would sell the tickets. We would run the bar, so any profits on the bar we'd get. We'd do all the ushering and all that sort of stuff. It was just, it was really good for our group. Whereas with the town hall, we have to have hall staff doing the ushering and what have you. So there's a few little things like that have changed, and obviously all that adds into the cost of the hire. So, yeah. Yes.
Every production here for an orchestra.
We don't have a set one. So when we do a show that we want an orchestra, we advertise for it, or if we know somebody very good musically, we'll approach them and see if they can organise a band, I guess. When we did Pirates last year, we had a 14-piece orchestra, I guess. So we had keys, we had drums, xylophones, we had all sorts of stuff for that. And that was really good. And most of those guys came from the Horsham City Band. So the musical director we had, he actually works at the hospital. He's from Ballarat. He moved up here a couple of years ago, and he's a musical genius. We were very lucky to find him, and he put his hand up to run that band, and he did a really great job. With Godspell, which we just did, he led the band in that, but that was more of a rock band. Did anybody see Godspell? Yep.
It's good to see them lift the curtain and see the orchestra at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people thought it was a recording, which was good, because when the curtain came up, a lot of people sort of, there's a band, so it's always a good surprise at the end, but they did a very good job, and the fellow that led that group, as I say, he's very, very skilled musically, and was able to work really well with those guys. Generally, we don't have bands for every show, so depending on the show, and this comes down to the rights when we hire the show as well. So sometimes you can get what they call a backing track, which is essentially the music on a CD without vocals, and some shows we do to a backing track, backing rehearsal track. Depends on the show. So Pirates, my wife directed Pirates, and she was adamant that we couldn't do the show without an orchestra. We had to have an orchestra because a lot of the cast banter goes back and forth with different members in the orchestra, and you can't do that if you're doing it to a recording, essentially. American Idiot, we had a band, but that show needed a band because it was a rock and roll show, and we wanted rock and roll, basically. So it was like a live concert almost, with our members singing and dancing and telling a story. So, yeah. But it depends on the show. We probably do half and half, really. So, yeah. Any other questions? No? Not just singing and dancing. As I said before, we have quite a few members that will never step foot on stage. They're not interested in singing and dancing. They'd rather build the sets. The set here was from Seussical that we did a few years ago. Did anybody see that? The Dr. Seuss musical. The lady that made that set, 11 out of 10. Like, it looked straight out of the book. It looked like an animated cartoon on the stage. The costumes and stuff are amazing for that. But we have quite a few members in the past and currently that would rather just build that and paint that than actually be on stage. And they're happy to sit there and watch, the show and see their beautiful set every year. Now that set, as you were saying before, recycling and reusing for the next show, that set was impossible because of how it was cut out and the shapes and stuff. So in the case of we make something as extravagant as that, sometimes a lot of that just gets thrown out because we really can't, use these weird clouds in Les Mis or something like that because it doesn't suit the show. But where we can recycle, if we can, cut that square out there and stick that onto another door or a fake house or something like that, we'll do all that sort of stuff. The steps here have been through that many shows, it's not funny. So stuff like that we can reuse, and we tech screw the shapes to the sides of them to give them character and whatnot per show. So But that was a classic example of the town hall letting input as to how we were putting it together and what we were doing with it, because there was parts of that. This whole section here actually turned around and became the bird's nest, and then it rolled off stage for another bit and all that sort of stuff. So it has to be able to take weight. It has to be safe, so it's got to tick all those things. But ultimately, it's got to look good, because that's what people remember. So we have people that do that. We have people that just want to paint sets. We have people that just want to make costumes. I love making costumes. Donkey in Shrek, if anybody saw that, a young girl from Nil made Donkey from scratch. So she designed the legs and the hooves for his hands and all that sort of stuff. And she made that basically from scratch. She's really talented at all that sort of stuff, and either foam and what have you. She made the sergeant's armour in that as well, to look like he had steel armour on and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so we have people that do that that'll never sing a note and have no desire to. So, which is good, because if everyone wanted to be on stage and no one wanted to build sets, we've only got half a show. So, any questions? No. So, once we approve the show, what happens next? So this is when the work comes into doing our shows. So we've approved the show, we've got a set team, we've got hopefully a band, depending on the show. Shrek was a show actually that we didn't have an orchestra for, so that was done to backing tracks. But it was such a big show, we actually didn't have space to have an orchestra. There was nowhere we physically could have put one. Even our backing vocalists for Shrek couldn't fit on stage, even behind the scenes, so we actually had them in the loading area with microphones outside. So, yeah, it was a bit of fun. The show's approved. What happens now? So, basically, this is when the planning and the hard work happens. So, this is working out scene breakdown, what nights you want, which characters, all that sort of stuff. So, we try to be as efficient as we can. We don't want cast coming out and sitting at the shed for 3 hours doing nothing. So we try to work out that, okay, opening scene for Shrek requires Shrek. It requires Shrek's parents. It requires the king and his daughter, you know. So for that scene, we'd only have 6 or 8 cast at the shed learning that scene. Now, depending how big a show it is, we might want to do 2 or 3 scenes a night. Generally, we start with singing. The first few weeks of any production, all we do is sing. We don't do anything with the show. We don't stage it. We don't do anything. We try to learn the songs because once you know the songs and then you have to act to it, it's easier than trying to learn it all in one go. Plus, the singing remains far better if you know it before you start acting. So all that stuff comes into play. Rehearsal schedules, planning for sponsorships, all that sort of stuff. The time that goes into the shows generally depends on the production team and how big the show is. As a rule, from start, like from when we start rehearsing to when it's on stage, is about 3 to 4 months. With that, it's 3 nights a week. So Monday nights 7 till 10, Thursday 7 till 10, Sundays 1 till 5 is what we rehearse with. In between those nights, we're building sets, so we never build sets when we're rehearsing. Hopefully, the cast aren't building the sets. Sometimes casts like to multitask and build sets as well, and then they come out other nights during the week. But generally, we try to coordinate everything so no one's overlapping and interrupting each other. The rehearsals, as I say, 3 hours a night and 4 hours on Sunday for 3.5 months before we're in the theatre. The week leading up to going on stage might be 5 nights for the week before we go on stage because we're running lighting, we're running sound, we're trying to fine-tune that final part of it before we begin the show run. How many hours? Thousands of hours go into it, like an insane amount of hours. When you add up cast rehearsals, all the costumes that are getting made at home, getting made at the shed, getting fitted out at the shed. Same with the makeup. Generally, the makeup comes in probably a month before we go on stage. Then we have people running makeup workshops. Yeah, it just goes on and on and on. And then every show without fail, doesn't matter how good it is, about 2 weeks before at the theatre, everyone's sick of the show, everyone's had enough. It's just, we've done it too many times. And then you hit the theatre and everyone's adrenaline kicks in and it goes to the next level. But 2 weeks out, everyone's generally burned out and had enough. It becomes a real chore, I guess, to push on. But we get there, and once you're in the theatre, it just goes next level. It becomes a whole new animal. So, how many volunteers make up our productions? Again, this varies from show to show. So with, say, Godspell's actual cast on stage, I think was 13, I think. And then there was a couple of cameos that popped in during the show. They had some backing singers in the wings. In one scene in Godspell, the curtains came up on the church, if you like, and you can see the backing singers up there singing. But between the cast, the orchestra, the backing singers, there was probably high 20s for Godspell. So that's a small show for us. Shrek would have been 100 plus between cast, backstage, costumes, props, all that sort of stuff. It was a massive show. So they're probably the two extremes. And depending, again, on how big the cast is, some shows, when we get the rights, state you have to have this many people in the show. Others, they don't. Some of them, like Grease, state you have to have this many characters, so you have to have the T-Birds, you have to have the Pink Ladies, that sort of thing. But then you can have as many randoms coming on and off as you like. So it really depends on the show. And obviously, the bigger the show, the more work goes into coordinating cast and rehearsing and that sort of stuff. So, but I think probably our biggest would be up around 120 or thereabouts for a show. So it's enough. It's enough to give you brain damage. So, any questions?
You have to have the lead roles. You'd have to have fill-ins, wouldn't you? Somebody who could take over if somebody got sick.
Funny you say that. We've never had it. So up until a couple of years ago, since I've been involved, we've never had an understudy as such. During Seussical, the one that we had the props up there before for it, our lead Cat in the Hat, it was opening. It was the first scene of one of the shows. She put her arm up to wave or something, and her shoulder dislocated, and her arm went limp, and she ran off stage like this. So that was a strange scenario because we didn't have an understudy for her. So we had another girl or woman that was part of that show, that knew the show, and she essentially stood at the back of the cast, I guess, on stage with a microphone, and she sang the Cat in the Hat's role while somebody else ran around pretending to be Cat in the Hat. So that was kind of a learning lesson for us. The girl that dislocated her shoulder, she got the clearance from the doctor to go on the next day, all taped up. She was running around with her arm in a sling and all this sort of stuff for the next few shows. But we sort of went, maybe we should have somebody learning. The hard thing for us, or what I've found, is when you become an understudy, there's no reward, if that makes sense. So you learn a role, but you don't get to perform it. So it's something I think if you're going to have an understudy, it'd be great to have them in a show, so they've done it, sort of thing. But we have since then had swing cast or understudies for certain characters, just in case something happens again. So, but it's a lot of work to learn a role on top of a role you're already doing, just in case, and then it's sort of not get anywhere with it, if that makes sense. But it's oh, absolutely, yeah. It has become a necessity though since that's happened. And actually, the first show I did, Les Mis, we had Cosette. She collapsed on stage, and she ended up in hospital. I can't remember what for or whatever. And we had to have one of the other cast wear her costumes, come out while somebody side stage sang all the parts for the next couple of shows until Cosette was well enough to come back and finish. But it does happen, but that's amateur theatre. And yeah, we are working on improving that. So yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. Our future is looking bright, despite all the costs and all that sort of stuff. We are currently looking at next May's show. We haven't locked it in cement yet. We did have a couple of ideas because we haven't had anybody come forth with a show for May next year. So when that happens, the committee puts their head together and goes, okay, well, let's pick a show, and then we'll advertise the show and see if we can get a team together to put it together. So we've thrown a couple of ideas around. One, we've got swinging at the minute. We did have it advertised in the Godspell program. We didn't say what the ad was, but it's got a yellow brick road in it, just to give you an idea. So we're hunting for people to come forward and help us get that together for the next show. Now, that one was a decision the committee made based on the Wicked musical movie that's out and it's happening at the minute. We thought, we need a big blockbuster type show. We've never done it in 60 years. And we figured if we could pull it off, it'll be on the coattails of Wicked, which everybody's hyped up and loving at the minute. And we think it'll be a really good show to sell tickets and get bums on seats. So it's not locked in cement, so don't take it as gospel, but that's what we're working on at the minute. So, yeah. But with that, we may have new members come through that get hooked and keep coming back like I have and quite a few other people have. The beginning of bigger things. So over the past 60 years, we have had quite a few members start with us as kids or whatever, and that have gone on to become professional actors on stage, all that sort of stuff. So there's a couple there. The fella down the bottom here, Alex Rathgaber. Have you heard of Alex? Yeah. He played Raoul in the Phantom of the Opera on West End in London. So he's, and among other things, he's done quite a few professional musicals and is still doing it. And Liam Robertson. He's probably our latest one. He's currently doing the Book of Mormon in Sydney professionally. So he was a young kid with us a few years ago. He only left us, I'm going to say, in the last 5 years to go to Melbourne and study performing arts and acting. And he's on his way to bigger things, which is really good. We have had some other guys go on and work on movie sets and props and things also, which is pretty interesting, but they've started out, making stuff for us and honed their skills and gone off to APRA in Sydney and gone bigger and better again. So, oops. Next production in May, watch this space, as I said before. I've just got a few past shots from prior shows. So we've got the dragon there from Shrek, Dennis from Rock of Ages, the little maids from Pirates of Penzance, the Major General, he was a lot of fun in Pirates, Donkey and Shrek, and the little, I don't know if you remember all the little kids coming out as baby donkeys at the end. Every night they stole the show, they got the biggest applause and all that stuff, and they were on stage for about 10 seconds. So, but it was a good finisher to the show. And Donkey was actually the father of this little donkey on the end there, so it was really good to get the kids involved and on stage with their parents. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, yes.
What must it be like backstage getting changed? My mind just boggles when I think, 1 minute they're in the costumes, a different costume, next minute they're off the stage, back on again.
It can get very chaotic, depending on the show, again, as to how many costumes. And the chorus are usually the ones that have the most costume changes. So I was the Pirate King in Pirates last year. I had one costume. So I got in at the start of the show, and that's what I wore for the whole show. So that was easy. I really enjoyed that. Some of the pirates, though, jump between other characters. So they'd run off stage for one scene and sprint back on the next scene with a different shirt and jacket and stuff like that on. When we did Les Mis in 2000, that was the first show I'd ever done, and I had 11 costume changes in there. And that's the most I've ever had. I've never struck that again. But because of that, I was at home one day with my 11 costumes, practicing how quickly I could get in and out of them. just because I knew it was going to be like that at the theatre. And the doorbell rang, and I was in a quite an odd costume. And I went and answered the door, and it was Jehovah's Witnesses, and they kind of looked me up and down and said, "Oh, have a good day," and off they went. So it was a bit of an experience, but yeah, sometimes that's a lot of the fun in the show is those challenges of getting changed and running around the back. When we did Grease years ago, this is my biggest error. Since I've been on stage, I'm bald clearly. I had a wig because I was one of the T-birds. I was clean and shaven, and my wig was quite ridiculous looking, but I had to be a young, cool dude. And this one scene required me to run out with a stick, and we were about to brawl, like get into a fight with the jocks at the school. And one night I sprinted out with my stick, and everyone started laughing. I thought, geez, that's never happened in any other shows. And I'm running my lines and I'm going bananas. And midway through my lines, I've gone, the wigs in the change rooms. I've come out bald for this scene. Everyone's killing themselves laughing. And I had to turn to the other T-birds and run some lines. And as clear as day, I can remember the guy that I'm eyeballing running the lines. He didn't notice. He's just there. The guy behind him, I see him go like this. And I thought, oh no, people are going to start noticing. And then I get into a scuffle with this guy that's eyeballing me, and he puts me on the deck, and he's over top of me, and as soon as he hits the deck, his hand's running all around my head because he thought he'd knocked me wig off and he was trying to find it. It was chaos. And anyway, scene finished and went off. Next scene I came back out with hair and everyone started laughing again. So things like that happen all the time, but that's the fun of amateur theatre. So yeah. But it is quite a challenge. And the makeup for Shrek was probably a bigger challenge, getting Shrek's ears to stick to his head and all those weird, wonderful things that you learn as you go along. We didn't know how we were going to do that. We bought a very expensive latex cowl from the US for him that didn't fit. In the end, we shaved his head as smooth as we could and got spirit gum, which is what they use in movies to stick stuff to skin. And stuck it on his head. It was permanent until he took it off, pretty much. So, yeah, who knew his head was like Shrek? But there you go. And his nose, too, was spirit gummed on. So, any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Nick.
No, that's all right. I hope you've enjoyed it.
A great description of the Arts Council, and I'm sure there's a lot more in it than I thought there was.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, no worries. Thank you very much.
It's a very important part of Horsham's infrastructure.
Yeah, we try to, make a safe place for people to come and have a go, and we like to think that we build confidence in the people that are involved. And so.
You've done a good job at outlining. Anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
It's a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, really? I actually brought those down for if anybody wanted to have a look through those. They're our program. Should have handed them out at the start, but you're welcome to take those if you'd like them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Okay. Thanks again, Nick. Next, we've got a young lass here from the Historical Society. Wendy Donald is going to give us a description of a couple of places quite familiar to us, the Lower Norton, Mackenzie Creek, and...
Just a touch on Victor's.
Yeah,
and I'll explain why.
Bit of our history.
Yeah.
So, welcome, Wendy. Thank you. You're going to use the gear or?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Get Trish to...
Thank you.
Thanks again, Nick. Yeah, good on you.
Yeah, I'll just put those up here. Now, I may have to ask Trish to set this up, but we'll see how we go. Yeah, better. I'm not very good with computers. I'll just get you to reset it up because the stick was out of it.
We had to take it out.
No, that's fine.
Put the other one in, so put it back in.
Yep.
And then if we go down.
Now I won't need a mouse because I just like go in the arrows, do I?
Yeah, you can just use the arrows, it'll be the easiest for you.
Yeah. I'm used to a mouse, but do you have a mouse for
Yeah,
it?
I've got a mouse if
Yeah,
you want one.
I might
I'll
be
grab
better
one.
with the mouse. Yep. Now I'm going to burn that here.
I've got a bit of paper to use as a
Oh,
mouse
yes,
mat
Yep.
to stop the reflection off the table.
Okay.
Complete withdrawing the CR.
Yep.
Go in there.
Can you get it?
Lift it up again. There we are.
Okay, now to move it on, what do we do?
So
There
you
was
can,
that arrow there.
yeah, use the arrow there, or if it's not going to work for you, use the arrow down here on the
Yep.
keypad.
You know that should work, I hope. No worries. Now I don't know whether most of you know me, but I'm Wendy Donald, and I'm not a professional. I'm just a local person who's interested in history, and I've written a couple of books and I've helped with a couple of others. So, yep. Now this, what I'm doing today, come by when someone from the Walsh family, they've just written a book on their the Walsh history, and it's not all local, but some of it is. And they asked me to talk on, well, first of all, they asked me to talk about on the Walsh family. And I said, look, I know nothing about Walsh family. And they said, yes, but you had 2 whole pages in that whole book on the Walsh family. And I said, that only come about because they lived in Walsh's Road at Lower Norton. And Marg Rigby, I got in touch with Marg because I knew she was somehow connected, and she organised a interview with Bill Walsh, who's now passed on, and he told me the brief history of the Walsh family that settled in around Walsh's Road area, and they had a large family, and one family, one daughter of that family married a Walsh, a distant relative, who come from Vectors. So that's how I did a bit of history on Vectors, only about schools, and because I got to thinking, what did they do at Vectors, and where did they go to church, where did they go to school? So I just very briefly did that. And another one, well, they always were at Lower Norton, and then another one, and Walsh's is still at Mackenzie Creek. And I thought, I don't know anything about Mackenzie Creek really, but I did discover I knew a bit about it when I went into investigations. So I got in touch with a few people from Mackenzie Creek that I knew. I'd known all my life because Haven's very close to Mackenzie Creek, and that's where I grew up. And so they gave me a bit more history, and that's how this slideshow eventuated. Well, I just explained why I've got the sign of Walsh's Road. That's because of the Walsh family. Now, first of all, I went and I did I knew a little bit about Vectors, but not much. I knew a fair bit about Lower Norton, but Vectors was sort of connected in a lot of ways. Some of the families were connected. So I went and I did a little bit on Vectors. And I thought, I wonder where the Walshes might have went to school, because the Walsh people didn't know, because a lot of them weren't local people. They were from further afield. They just decided to have the reunion here at the golf club. So first of all, I went to Vectors and went to talk about Vectors, and this was the site of the Vectors East School. and I was told that the Walshes were mainly from around Vectis East. So I didn't have a picture of the school at that stage, but I went out and I took a picture of the sign that's there now. And after talking to a few people, where's this stop working? Yeah. After I got talking to a few people, I realised that I did know that school because when I did the drone book, this school that was at Vectis East was moved to Vectis East from Drone. So I did have a picture of it, but this picture that I've got is not when it was at Drone. It was only quite a small school, and then they added to it. When it was moved to Vectis East, it was added 2 rooms for the teacher and his family. So that's why it's quite different. And that was moved to Vectis in 1901. Now we're going on to the Vectis School. The Vectis School was originally part of the Vectis homestead. The school was not in the homestead, but it was near the homestead. And when time went by, I'll just give you a little bit of history on the homestead, where the school originally was. The school was moved from the homestead, possibly when the homestead was demolished in around 1933, and it was run for 12 months at the Vectis Hotel. Now, the Vectis Hotel was just, when you're going out the highway, it's just over the bridge at Quantong to your left. There's a house on the site of the hotel now. But a lot of the parents were not happy about their children going to school in a hotel. So a new school was built down along the river a fair way towards Lower Norton Way, and the children attended there for a while. And then, in those days, the schools were every 6 miles. And as the settlers' families grew, the school was moved. So this school, the Vectis School, was moved to what is now known as Moody's Road. And Moody's Road was named after one of the teachers, the last teacher at the school. And that road is just off the Darrington Pit Road, which runs from Lower Norton almost to Nanimuc, but along there. So this school closed in 1914 and it moved to Nurcong. Do you know where that is? That's further out. But this is the picture of the school, Moody School, being moved from, Lower Norton now it was. It was moved out to Nurcong, and that's a picture of it going through Nanimuc on its way in about 1914. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit more about the Vectis homestead when I work this thing out. The Vectis homestead was built in 1864 and it was demolished in, about mid-1930s. It was built by the Wilson brothers. He was known as Alexander, that was his second name, but Alexander and his brother John. So that's the history of a very brief history of the Vectis homestead. But it was such a pity to see it demolished apparently, and all the parts, a lot of it was sold. Some of it was built into a house which is very near to it, and it was demolished a few years ago also. I'll have a photo of it, but I didn't bring it today. Okay, we're just moving on now. Now, this is the Vectis State School, also known as Moody School, and I've already said established at the station in 1875, conducted at the Bridge Hotel 1878 to 79, new building erected further along the river, 1878, moved to the site where it is now in 1884 and closed in 1914. And in November, the Lower Norton people got together and they erected a stone on the site. It's a little rectangle block with the old gum trees that all schools had around them. And the Lower Norton people advertised it well. and we got people from everywhere, the Moody family, the McPhees, and a lot of the families that lived along that part of the river. There was a settlement there, quite a large settlement, Catholic people, and they all attended Moody School, and it was lovely to see a lot of them turn up, you know. Some of them had even, you know, their fathers attended it and all sorts of things. And it was unveiled in 2011. Now we're moving on to another school at Vectis, and that was the Polcamet School. And it is still standing as far as I know, but some people called, they were actually my cousin, Jeff Kinnesley, his wife turned it into a studio. She was into the arts and all sorts of, you know, things like that. So she turned it into a bit of a studio. Now we have where did they go to church? They may have went to the Vectis East Methodist Church. It was built by a well-known Vectis stone mason, I suppose you call him, and a very skilled brick builder. And his name was Michael Harris, and he was responsible for a lot of the churches around Vectis. There was a couple of other churches, and he also he worked on the White Hart Hotel, he worked on the First Church of England, and he worked on Clark's mansion that used to be at the top of the main street. I've got pictures of that later on. But he was a very skilled man. Now we're moving on to Lower Norton. Now we moved out to Lower Norton from Horsham in around 1980s, and we were always a bit concerned that Lower Norton had no signs, no identification. It was just there, but there weren't any signs. So my husband was a friend of David Elchingham's, and he spoke to David, and David very kindly organised 2 signs. One at the beginning, which is just over the Wimmera Bridge on the Lower Norton Road, out to Lower Norton, Horsham, the Radger Road, and he organised one there, and he organised another sign at the other end of Lower Norton, which is about, it's really the sign's just near the Darrington Pit Road. So now we had signage, and we were going to get more signage over the bridge at Haven, over the Mackenzie Creek Bridge, or Mackenzie River they call it now, but that never eventuated. So we still have the 2 signs, and this is Fred and Joan Barr, and Kay and Fred Blake, and a girl that lived at, her parents lived there. She was a McDonald. She was a Dumacy, but she was originally from the McDonald line. It's a sign now. Now, just doing a very brief history on Lower Norton. This is the Lower Norton Post Office, because often when a settlement took place, they'd have, first of all, they'd get a post office, and then they'd have children, so they'd get a school, and of course they often had a church, and they also had a hall. So this is the post office. It opened in 1918 and closed in 1974, and it was run by the Carmichaels. Miss Jean Carmichael, she was there for 56 years, and this is her with her brother Duncan. Neither of these 2 got married. Now this one, you can't really see it very well, it's not very clear, but this is the unveiling of the plaque on the first school at Lower Norton, and it was known as the Darrington School. Darrington is the area of Lower Norton, and it was known as the Darrington School, and it opened in 1882, so it was quite early, and the building was not demolished, but moved to Graham Timmins' place in 1887. Then Lower Norton had a second school. This is on the second site, and that's on the Horsham the Radger Road. It opened in 1887, and closed in 1955. Now this is the back to Lower Norton, and it was in 1987. And this is the unveiling of the plaque on the second school, and you may recognise, some of you might know Ray Francis. He's the man behind it. He's a local man, and I think that's me back there somewhere. Now, Lower Norton also had a Methodist church, and it was on Ray Francis's parents' place, and it opened in around about 1906. The church was moved to Grass Flat in 1930, and then later on ended up at Quantong. Quantong later had a school, of course, but that's a picture of it being moved from Ray Francis's place to Grass Flat around 1930. Now, Lower Norton did have a hall. This is just another one picture. Lower Norton did have a hall. I was not around when that was open, but it was a tin outside, I believe, and it was unlined. Now, this is a picture of a lady McDonald, Dorothy McDonald, whose parents lived there, just near there, and that was in 1952. That was her kitchen tea. Just remove that. Now, the hall was eventually demolished, and a stone was put on the site of it. The stone is really to the pioneers as well as to mark the hall. The hall was actually demolished in 1975. Now, Lower Norton is a little bit different to a lot of country areas because it had a great diversity of farming. Vectis was mainly cropping and sheep and maybe some cattle, and lower Vectis was fruit growing there at Quantong, but that was more Quantong than Vectis. Now, the McDonald family, who lived on the Horsham to Radger Road, they grew farm clover seed. And as you'll see there, that's Margaret McDonald on the tractor, and that's the clover seed. Don't ask me how it was cropped, or it would have been quite a process, I would think. And that's just another picture of the operation of the clover seed. And just while I'm here, I'll just go over some of them. We've got some slides of these. We had clover seed, McDonald's at Lower Norton. We had grapes and wine. It was started at the property that was later Bars. And then we had fruit orchards, and that was mainly at Riverdale near the river, and that was Clark's. Clark was Mr. Clark, Robert Clark. He was a Horsham flour miller. He had flour mill on the corner of Darlett and Wilson Street, almost the whole block. He was a very rich man. And then the Nesbitts, near the Wimmera River, they had chickens and eggs. They would buy lots and lots of eggs, and day-old chickens, and then when they grew up, they'd sell the eggs. Later on, we had the Mitchell family. They tried to farm yabbies, and they had two big dams built, big square dams, but it wasn't a success because of the lack of water. They couldn't keep the water up to them, so that didn't go on. And a lot of people at Lower Norton had pigs, the millers and a lot of other people, and there's still signs of the yards there. And then a bit later on, John Aisbett, I don't know whether you know John Aisbett, but he tried buffaloes. And we had quite a big herd of buffaloes there near Fred Blake's place near the Wimmera River. And it really died out because of the fact that they were too hard to slaughter around here, and they had to be go a long way to be slaughtered. And then we had Mark and Tina Lloyd's. Mark was a Horsham doctor, and they put up big high fencing and they tried deers. And they soon learnt that when you try to round up deer, they're very, very active. And every now and again, someone would say, there's a deer out. So people would have to sort of herd it back to their Lloyd's place. I don't think any ever stayed out there. I've never seen any in the bush there, but I think they rounded up most of them. And then we had a Miss Mitchell, and she had goats. She bred goats for quite a while out there. And Dorothy and Michael Cook, they had a great rose growing procedure, and I'll talk about that later. And then, of course, the Donalds, that's us, my daughter and I had a horse stud there, and before us, the Francises had Clydesdale horse stud as well. And there was a few people out there breeding dogs. There was German Shepherds, Huskies, Kelpies and Greyhounds. And then, of course, we had grapes and wineries. But now we're going to talk a little bit about Robert Clark. Robert Clark, as I've told you, he was a flour miller, and he brought land out at Lower Norton all along the river, quite a big acreage. And this is just a picture of them pumping water out of the Wimmera River to water his fruit growing business. Why isn't it working? Yep, that's it. And this is one of the descendants of the Clark family, and of course you'll see, maybe you won't, but 1930. He's made it out of fruit on the ground, and that's how we know exactly when that picture was taken. Now, talking about Robert Clark, remember I said that he built, Michael Harris built this house in Horsham on the corner of Firebrace and the main of Firebrace and Barley Street, and this is a picture of Lowestoft. It was originally, he called it originally Roseneath Hall, and later on it was changed, the name was changed to Lowestoft, and it was built by the stonemason Michael Harris. And it was demolished around about 1956, I think, and it was a terrible thing to happen to that beautiful house. It was 3-storied, it was 2-storied, and then it had underground rooms as well. But when they tell us that when they went to knock it down, it was very hard to knock down. And they were all told that it was cracked and, not worth keeping. But it stayed empty for quite a few years, and it was known as the haunted house. And I only remember it vaguely. I was only very young, but I remember vaguely because everyone talked about this haunted house, and that got my interest. So that's all I remember about it, this spooky house, and it was really a beautiful house. Now, also at Lower Norton, we had dairy cattle. Nesbitt's there had quite a few dairy cattle. They're the ones who also had eggs, sold eggs. And next we have Ern Smith. The Smith family were well known for their fine merino wool. And I don't think there's any Smiths out there now, but I think most of their property, yes, all their property now has been sold, which is sad. But Ern Smith was a great guy, and we were very friendly with his son, Ross. And this is Nesbitt's chook pens, quite a big concern in those days. He's got 2 buckets of eggs. Now this is I don't know how to make it bigger, but this is Michael Cook's rose growing. It was in Plush Hannons Road, and he built these big, huge sheds where he grew his roses, and he also built a big dam to water the roses, and he had a very efficient irrigation system in the sheds. And this is him with some of his roses. They were sold all over the world. He would harvest them, long stems, and he'd send them to Melbourne on the express the same day he cut them, and they'd be overseas the next day, more or less. So he had a roaring business there, but they went away for holidays, and they'd done it many times, and the watering system was going, you know, at certain times, and it was all set. Anyway, they come home to disaster. Something had happened, and all the roses were dead. They were just all dead. They just, the heat in the glass house combined with the lack of water for a couple of weeks, I think it was, and they were all dead, and they just didn't have the energy to start up again. So that was the end of that, which was very sad for Lower Norton. Now, this is the house of Don and Wendy Spence. Now, you might have heard for Norton wines. You all heard of Norton wines? No, world famous, and they've got a flourishing business now. But this house was on the block that Don Spence bought. It was on the Plush Hennons Road, and this house had been moved many, many years ago from Horsham, and it sat on this hill at Lower Norton for many years, and this is what it ended up like. Just have a look at that. And then when the Spencers brought it, that is the same house. Wendy Spence was very much a worker, and Don planted all these grapevines, and Wendy worked on the house as well as in the grapevines, and this is the same house. Now, when Don and Wendy's son took over the winery, Don passed away, and Norton Estate started up, and this is the actual first building there. That was the first Norton Estate, and they moved this shed, or whatever it was, they moved it from somewhere, and that was the first Norton Estate. The old house that Wendy done up is now been moved, and it's out near Green Lake Road out there, and the people who brought and moved it have done it up again, and it's beautiful, beautiful. They've added to it. And Don's son, Chris, has built a beautiful big new house on the block, and that is now on for sale. The winery's for sale.
What year were you talking about?
Sorry?
Don and Wendy they lived next door to us.
Did they? Yeah, no. Well, he worked on the what was it?
Was there 3 boys?
Yeah, that's right. Chris is the one that's got the winery now. But I haven't got when Don died. Wendy died first. She died of cancer. Yes, yeah. She died of cancer, and then Don died many years later.
Well, we were always taking footballs and tennis balls back because they had 3 boys.
Yes,
Three
yeah.
boys to boys.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I knew he worked for some. Yeah. Now this is an old shed. I just put this in for the sign of the times, which is now not there. It's been moved, demolished at least, and that was in the Plush Hennons Road. Now we're moving on now, and we're going over to Mackenzie Creek. Now this first picture is an old house on the Vincent's property. It's one of the very early old mud brick houses, but I just love that picture. That's why I put it in to start the Mackenzie Creek talk. And as I said, when I started planning this talk, I didn't know a lot about Mackenzie Creek, but I had a friend. I'll just show you that this is a map of the Bunga Valley area. Bunga Valley and Mackenzie Creek, because there's a Bunga Valley Creek, and then a bit further on is the Mackenzie Creek. And they meet, you'll see here, they run into each other there, and they meet just near off Mackley's Road. It's a bit hard to describe that, but they meet just where Mackenzie Creek is, where Bunga Valley Creek is now, in there. They run in and then they go on to the Wimmera River. Now, this is an early picture of the Mackenzie Creek group. Have any of you heard of George Godfrey? George Godfrey was a great man of the area. The Godfreys had the Mackenzie Creek post office for a while, but George was a mailman, and he used to pick up the mail along the way, and that's George with his first mail car. And he was a gorgeous man. He lived to a grand old age, and I got to know him in his later years, and he wrote a book on poetry, and he also had a diary of his war, his First World War, the whole lot. Every day he wrote, and the Historical Society made that into a book. Yeah, so that's George. Now, Mackenzie Creek School. Mackenzie Creek School started in 1896, and that's just a picture of the school. It was, as you see, it was a large attendance there, and Haven School was about, well, it must have been about 6 miles long, and then this was way before Haven. So some of the children later from the area, from the Mackenzie Creek area, attended the Haven School. That's the front of the Mackenzie Creek School, and that's the back view of it. That must have been a straw shed that was out the back. Anyway, I got to thinking, and now I knew Kath Hayes. She was Kath Hayes, and she married Viv McGinniskin. And David was a great friend of Viv's, and I thought, oh, I think she might have been a school teacher, and I think she might have taught at this school. So I went to see her, and sure enough, she did, and she gave me a picture of the school when she was there. In this school picture, we got Graham, I'll just read out the names, Graham Hutchison, Bev Flack, Lorna Louie, Pam McIntyre, Margaret Tippett, Anne Walsh, and Arthur Louie. And the front was Ozzie Tippett and a child Smith, I don't know the name, Reg Louie, and then Barry Hutchison on the other side, on the other end. Well, Kath, when I went to see her, she told me that she started at the McKinney School, and she taught at Mackenzie Creek between 1950 and 1953. This school was eventually moved to the McKinney Golf Club and then later to a farm out there. Some people told me it was McGinniskins and some people told me it was another name, so I'm not sure, but someone said that they're pretty sure it was one of the McGinniskins. And this is Kath McGinniskin, quite a few years ago, unveiling the school plaque in 1997.
She used to teach me at 298.
That's right, yes, she taught there too. She taught at quite a few schools, some out of Horsham and some, 298, yes.
And her sister-in-law taught me too.
Ah, yes, that's right, but another McGinnis, she married a McGinniskin too, that's right. Just can't think of her name. I should know it. But this is the unveiling of the plaque, and that's a group of people at the unveiling. There was Hutchisons, McIntyres, Butlers, Jill Hutchison, Neville McIntyre, Terry Vincent, and the Louie twins. And that's the plaque at the site of the school. And if you were looking for the site of the school, it's near the, there's a fire shed nearby now, out the highway on your left, out the Henty Highway. And that's the plaque on the marker out there. Open, established 1881, closed 1974, and it was unveiled in 97 by the Rotary Club. Now, there was also a church at Mackenzie Creek, and that was moved to Lahurram. And this is a picture of it arriving at Horsham, and apparently the school went very well until it almost got to Horsham when it got tangled in some overhead wires. But it was almost there, but that's it arriving, and it was pulled over there by a tractor, and they used one of Poppy Raggett's drays to put it on to move it. And Robert Quayle, he drove the tractor, and when he was 16 years old, and he drove the tractor all the way up to Horsham and then got tangled in some wires. But anyway, it turned out all right. And that's it at Horsham. It's not there now, but that's when it was there, near the hall and the school. And it's now on a property out there at Horsham, the old church. And then they also had a hall at Mackenzie Creek, and it was moved to Wonwanda. The paddock behind the wall was known as John Walsh's paddock, and they tell me that that's where they used to leave the ponies when the children rode them to school, in John Walsh's paddock. And that's it arriving at Wonwanda. And before this picture was taken, it did get bogged, so it was moved to one side, and then they had to wait a while and then moved it to where it is today. And it's still going very strong, and it's very nice hall even today. It's, in good condition. Now, I was talking about Poppy Raggett before. He did a lot of moving of houses and properties in the area, and this is him moving a house of Voight's. That house was moved from near the Bunguelli Creek, and it was out the highway, out the Henty Highway, just near the Mackenzie Creek Reserve Road, which is a road to your left out there. Oh, sorry, that picture, the two boys at the front, if you can see them, it's not that clear, are Barry and Graham Hutchison, and they've got Archie's whip there. Yes, they were. Archie, I've got some wonderful pictures of him moving houses around this area in Horsham. I've got beautiful pictures of him moving houses in Darlett Street and a lot of other houses. Oh, is it? Yeah, I know where that is.
And us kids come home from school, and there it was a big lake and block beside it was full of Frank Laters, the jeweller.
Oh, yes.
And he was doing a big Huey, the paddock, pull it up right to face the road.
Oh.
Us kids got in the road and said, "You bloody kids, get out of the road, old wicked."
Yes. Poppy was had a sad life. At that last house he moved, he actually had one of the last houses he moved, it wasn't that one, but he had a stroke, and he ended up in hospital eventually, and I nursed him in what must have been the late 60s, and he ended up in hospital for 13 years. A very sad life for a man who did such a great job of moving houses, and such a physical type man. Now, somewhere along the way, the Walshes married into the Butler family, and the Butlers lived in the on the Henty Highway. And this is a picture of the Butler family and some Walsh girls in 1922. Pictures of them on their horses. And they also had trotting horses, and that's that's a Butler trotting horse called Black Grattan. And you'll notice that in those days they didn't have sulkies. They had the harness. You can see they rode them, and you can see the harness down. That's supposed to stop them from galloping, although some do it quite well. And they built a nice home there, the Butler family, a Lambie. And that's still there today, beautiful home. And that's some of the Walsh family girls on the veranda of Allambie. And probably what Mackenzie Creek's best known for is the quarries. Now, this is the Donnybrook Quarry, and that's not on the highway. It's off the highway, and it's on the Mackenzie Creek Reserve Road down there near McIntyre's house. And that got to be quite a good area for people going having picnics. But apparently the stone from that quarry wasn't real good, so it didn't last long at all. But then the quarry opened on the highway, and in the early days, I think 1882, a rail line, tram line they called it, was built from the Mackenzie Creek Quarry into the Horsham Railway Station. And in the beginning, when you walk along there, we lived there and we knew about this, where it was, and that's why a lot of the land in front of our place at Haven was not occupied. It was owned by the road board or whatever, but in later years we did buy that area. But if you look very closely, you could see where the old railway line was, because in areas it was built up, and it was originally it was pulled by horses, and they tell me it was very dangerous because they lost a lot of horses, because when it come down the hill, sometimes it sort of took off, and it must have been dreadful for the animals. But later on, Dookie Turnbull was the driver, and he had shares in the quarry somehow, and he was actually killed at the quarry in a rock fall. He must have been there on his own, and the rocks come down on him. He didn't die immediately. They found him, but he died. He died afterwards, and he drove this tram for many years. And that was taken at Easter in 1920, because this tram line also took children, the church children and the school children from Horsham, out to their school picnic area that was near the Mackenzie Creek and the Bunguelli Creek. And that's another picture of it. You'll see that's going for a picnic. You'll see that, is there 4 carriages? Anyway, it was big, wasn't it? In the front is all the tables and that they took, and then all the children were transported in the trucks at the back. Imagine doing that these days, especially on a dangerous trip with 2 horses that the tram could have taken off. That was, yep, okay. That's a tram and school children. And this is the school picnic. That's a very early picnic. That was about 1920. And that's a picnic again at Bunguelli around 1942. And one of the Joyce Hunt, later Joyce Hamby, I think she might be in that picture. And it's possibly the dark-haired girl. I'm not sure which one. And that's another picture of a picnic, 1941. They dressed up to go on a picnic, didn't they? The men wore suits and the children wore their best clothes. Now today, I didn't think it was still open, but the Horsham College has a campus out there. It's originally it was built for children who didn't cope in the normal education system. So they went out to this more relaxed area out there. It was in bushland near there, and it's still working apparently, because the other day when I was out that way taking this photo, there was a bus in there, a small bus, so they must still use it to a certain extent. Now we come to the quarry, and that's looking down into the quarry. That's some of the men at the quarry in front of their truck. A lot of Haven men worked at the quarry because Haven was quite close, and a lot of those men ended up with lung disease, and a few of them died quite young because in those days you had no protection at all. It was just, they didn't even realise, I don't think, that the dust was bad for their lungs.
When did that truck in the background?
Yes.
My dad worked at Canterbury.
Oh, did he?
And that's used to come out of Horsham and had some stool,
Yeah.
and they'd pick men up in
Yep.
Horsham and bring them out to the quarries then and
That's fascinating.
put back on, come back to the Horsham.
Oh, incredible, isn't it? Yeah. And what was your dad's name, sorry?
It was Les Mott.
Oh, yeah.
It was the powder month.
Oh, really? He did the blowing up.
We used to, my younger sister and I used to go out to the quarry on a Saturday afternoon with Dad,
Oh,
and he tied a long rope on a rock up the top.
Yep.
And around his waist, and he'd have a
Yeah, drill holes.
And he'd go down the side of the quarry with his
incredible.
and to make holes.
To put the dynamite in or whatever they use. Yep.
They set it off.
Yep. No, well, we lived at Haven,
Yeah, I know
And-
where you live.
yeah, and we often heard the blasting at the quarry. Very, very common. Yep. Okay, now what have we got here? Just a few more pictures of the quarry, and that's the early picture. And they used to load the stone by hand into these little wagons, and then push it down into where it was, crushed down to the crusher. And this is a later. They eventually got, this is 1965, and a 6-ton dump truck in the picture there. But I'll just go back a few years when the tram line shut down. The tram line that ran up McPherson Street was pulled out in around 1933 with drought relief. And then, of course, the railway line closed when they started to cart it with trucks. You know, very early trucks, a lot earlier than that one, of course. But it shut down probably in the round about 1930, the actual railway line. And that's much later. That's a face shovel, a bit easier than doing it with hand shovels. And that is the crushing mill. Hydraulic, the quarry crusher. Now, there were some other businesses in Mackenzie Creek. They did have some sheep and, of course, few had cattle. And they did have some cropping, but maybe not as much as the Vectis sort of area. And even Lower Norton did cropping in the early days, quite a bit of cropping. And one business out there, you might remember that, was Plush Engineering. Yep. Kevin's in the Lutheran Rest Home now, and his wife died some years ago. But he had a roaring business there, a very clever man. I tried to get a picture. There used to be a sign out the front, Plush Engineering, but no one had one, and Kevin's daughter didn't have one. I didn't know of one, but it would have been nice to have a picture of it. And another business out there, which you probably all know of, is Vincent's Sawmill. And then a much later business, I don't know whether, did anyone here remember Mackenzie Creek Chapel? It was all pretty recent, really. It opened in 2012, and it was Ross and Wendy Croker were there 10 years. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about now. And
It's really nice.
it's beautiful. But these days we were out there. We just went for a drive, and the people who live there now let us have a look. But it's nothing like it was. I've got pictures like it was, thank goodness. And now he's made it into, he's into old cars, hot rods and that. And there's all hot rods on the pictures, on the walls. and all the pews are gone, and it's not like it was. And Wendy said that she cries when she sees it. But they were very nice people, and they showed us through. Yep. And that's inside the chapel. She held weddings there and charged for the weddings, and that's how she sort of made it into a bit of a business. But her husband died, but she still continued with it for a while. And it was beautiful, yeah. And the opening was lovely when they opened it, because they had a lady playing the harp. I know her name, I just can't think of it. Yeah, anyway, it was a lovely opening. And this is just a list, you won't be able to read this, but Mackenzie Creek phone, that's a list of the phones in the area. And that's all the Mackenzie Creek people, which you won't be able to read, of course. Now, the honour boards, there was 3 honour boards in the hall at Mackenzie Creek. They're now in the Wamwanda Hall. And that's one of them with the, that was the boys from who went to school and then went to war later on. That's a list of them. And that's another one of the boards. That's ex-pupils again, and that was in the First World War. And this is the one in the Second World War, 39 to 45 in the Wamwanda Hall. I think that's about all now. Yep. Okay then, well that's just a very brief over all of, of the things. But this is the pages that I got from Bill Walsh. He told me all the family and where they went to Vectis and Mackenzie Creek from Lower Norton. And the people that wrote the book thought I was an expert on it, because they said, but you had stories in the Lower Norton book. And I said, what, 2 pages? But anyway, they were quite happy to have a bit of a history of the area. And I've just put this in because the signs of the old railway bridge where the tram went over are still, if you look down the bottom, that was taken a few years ago now, but you can still see the bridge that the tram line went across. And each side of, that's Bunga Valley Creek, not Mackenzie, but Bunga Valley, and each side you can see how it was built up as it went, across the bridge. Yeah. But it's amazing what you can find if you look.
I was always told, that the horses school.
Yes.
They used to be on top of a hill somewhere and then roll right through the Horsham.
Oh, yes, yep.
On their road.
Yeah, well, no, look.
They had to walk back up to the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah, no, look, it could be true. Later on it was pulled by mechanical. I don't know whether it was a tractor or what, but it wasn't always horses in later years. But no, that's probably quite true.
My grandparents lived at Haven opposite where the service station and that is.
Oh, yes, up there. Yeah.
And we used to run up the tram tracks.
Yes.
Right down as far as we could go.
Yeah.
And we get scared to go and we went too far. We had to come back.
Oh, yes, yep, no, very good. Okay, well, I hope that's all right, but I thought, yep.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Yeah. Giving us a pretty good idea of what's out south.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just picked up my ears on the Victor's homestead. I remember the Wilson boys reading
Yes.
about them when they were there, and they
Pretty rough.
used to, the 2 boys, they used to pay the kids out around Natamuck and Vectis to catch all the cats and put them in a bag, and they'd pay them so much for them.
Yes.
And I'd take them back to the homestead where they had this great dining room there, and they'd let the cats go in there. Then they'd put their Irish stag hounds in them.
Oh,
I don't think they minded a drink or two either.
No. And when they went to wreck the building, they found bullet holes everywhere.
Oh, you know, they were pretty wild mob.
So
Well, yeah,
must have been like the Wild West.
yeah, it would have been. I think it was.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it for this
Yep.
morning.
No worries.
Thanks very much.
No worries. Just
It's
speak.
a small token of our appreciation.
Oh,
when it's,
thank- Oh, thanks. No,
something to
that's lovely. Yep,
bit of appreciation.
no worries. Okay.
Wendy,
Yes.
very thorough and very interesting.
Oh, I
Thank
hope
you
so.
very much.
I hope so. Yeah, I
You
was.
do a wonderful job and such a lot of work.
Oh,
But
Well,
you
I
love
was-
it. You
I was.
love it.
Yeah, I was doing it anyway for this this book reunion
Yes,
thing.
yes, that's
So I
all
thought that can be a one that I can do
right.
here.
Well, thanks for telling us.
No worries. Yep. No worries.
Brought back
problem.
some memories
Yep.
with some of the ladies. I could hear them.
Oh, I know.
And you.
Yeah, nice. No.
Hopefully our recorder went fine.
Yep. I'll just.
You're all right.
Yeah.